Hey everyone, today we're gonna talk about the Butcher's Bind and the Bold Boost, which are two of the new switch skills for the bow that were added in Sunbreak. And if you haven't seen it, I made a specific video for the stake because I think it deserves it. But this video is gonna focus on the two remaining switch skills, which are the Butcher's Bind and the Bold Boost. So we're gonna take a look at exactly what they do, if they are any good, and some recommendations on how to implement them in your gameplay. And we're gonna start with the Butcher's Bind because I think that's what most people are curious about. So what does the Butcher's Bind do? When you use the Butcher's Bind, you're gonna shoot a binding arrow to the monster, and you're gonna have a tether from you to the monster to that arrow. And if you shoot your follow-up shot to that binding arrow, you're gonna have a damage multiplier, and you're gonna do severe damage. Now the boost in damage is going to depend on what coding you have equipped at the moment. For close range coding, you go from 1.2 raw multiplier to 1.25, and for power coding, you go from 1.35 to 1.38. So the boost in damage is pretty small, it's not very significant. If you have a status coding, it's just going to apply more status. Now please note that this boost in damage is just on a follow-up shot. So when you bind the monster with your arrow, only the follow-up shot will have this boost in damage. Now I think what Capcom intended with this skill, there was two goals. The first goal is to cut tails, obviously because it does severe damage, and the second goal is to use it on monsters that have a bad range hit zone. You see me on this fight using it on Nagakuga, and when you see me using it, the damage is a lot higher than my regular shots. Now the question is it good at any of those two things? No, it's not. It's absolutely horrible. The wind up on this move is way too long, the follow-up shot is also slower, and the damage it gives you is just not worth the Wirebug or the time it takes to shoot it. It's gonna take ages to cut any tails with it. I think the regular melee is better than this move. And on this clip, it's actually the ideal situation on Nagakuga to use the Butcher's Bind, because Nagakuga's head has a very low shot hit zone, but a very high saber hit zone. And still in that ideal situation, it's not worth using it. You're better off using regular shots that are much faster than the Butcher's Bind. On top of that, the Butcher's Bind, since it uses a Wirebug, you're not able to use the Herculean Jaw as much, which you lose on the buff from the Herculean Jaw. So yes, the high numbers do look good, but I promise you it's not worth it. Now, two more things about the Butcher's Bind. First, it does mounting damage, so if you do use it, you're gonna get mounts eventually. And the second thing is that it activates your dog ability. Dogs are very strong in Sunbreak with the new addition to their abilities. So if you do have a dog, the Butcher's Bind will activate their abilities. However, even if you don't use it, it's gonna activate on its own after a minute. So if you ask me, it's still not worth using the Butcher's Bind. Now let's move on and let's talk about the Bold Boost, which is actually more interesting and better than the Butcher's Bind. So the Bold Boost is gonna give you a buff similarly to Herculean Jaw. It's a different buff. What the Bold Boost does is that it creates what's called a super critical range. And when you do it, your quiver is going to glow, and the glow is going to last for 1 minute and 45 seconds. So it's a very long buff. And like I said, it's going to create a super critical zone. So if you look at my screen now, the reticle is actually going to change to indicate that you're at the right distance. And if you're at the right distance, you're going to get a 15% boost to your raw damage and a 10% to your elemental and status damage. On top of that, if you use absolute power shot, you get +2 stun per arrow. So it's very noticeable how much faster you get your KOs with this boost. The only issue lies with the fact that it's very difficult to consistently be in the super critical range. If you dash backward or forward, you're immediately going to be out of the range, and even while shooting in the range with the recoil from the power shots, you're going to get out of the range constantly. It's specifically more difficult with spread bows because spread bows require you to play literally in the monster's face to not miss your arrows. Bold Boost requires you to be a little bit further away with spread bows, and on a lot of monsters, if you are at the distance that Bold Boost requires you to play, you're gonna start missing arrows. It is noticeably easier to maintain it with Rapid and Pierce though, so those shouldn't be an issue. However, the good thing with Bold Boost is that it lasts for a very long time, 1 minute and 45 seconds. So my recommendation is to have Herculean Draw on your main scroll and have Ball Boost on your secondary scroll. That way at the beginning of the fight, you can buff yourself with Ball Boost, then switch to your main scroll and then use Herculean Draw for the rest of the fight to maintain that buff. Herculean Draw lasts for 30 seconds, so you have to be on top of it to maintain that buff. And then if you want to, you can refresh it when the monsters move to a different zone. So if you play spread, I would consider Ball Boost as a bonus. You can apply it and literally play spread like you normally would. It's going to proc sometimes naturally, so don't worry about it too much. If you play Rapid and Pierce though, you can try to stay in the critical range zone because it's easier, but don't worry about it too much if you're not able to. Consider it as a bonus more than something you have to maintain all the time. So overall, I think the new additions to Sunbreak for the bow were pretty good. The Butcher's Bind, very underwhelming, not useful at all, I think. So I would disregard this skill completely. But other than that, the Ball Boost is actually quite good. And the Stake that I made a specific video about, I think is great. So overall, I think it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the new additions to the bow. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you have any questions, as usual, just feel free to ask me in the comments. See you next time.